Senator Polley.
Thank you very much, Mr Acting Deputy President. I rise today to inform the opposition that the Gillard government's budget is certainly not one that can be characterised as more debt, more deficits and more taxes. It is a balanced, prudent, reasonable budget that makes wise investments in Australia's future. It's a budget which recognises that the global economy remains fragile and that a high Australian dollar is not welcome news to many businesses. We cannot expect to reap the same tax revenues we have enjoyed in previous years, and this budget prepares for that. My own state of Tasmania will benefit enormously because the Gillard government has made sound choices for the future of the state. We chose improved infrastructure. The next phase of the $60 billion investment through the National Building Programs commits significant funds to major new projects. This takes Labor's total investment in the state's road, rail and public transport infrastructure to an unprecedented $1.9 billion since 2008. The government has released its preliminary schedule of new projects to be funded and delivered over the next nation building program, comprising the next 5 years. This list includes $500 million going towards the Midlands Highway package to improve safety and productivity. But of course, this budget is not just about improving Tasmanians' roads. Just under $120 million has been dedicated to freight, rail, revitalisation to continue improvements to the major lines. We chose a first-class health system. I know this issue is a particularly uncomfortable one for those opposite me, since their leader presided over a massive cuts to the federal health funding whilst he was the health minister. And I recall it was some $1 billion that was gutted out of the health budget under Mr Abbott. This budget provides Tasmania with a record $399 million investment in funding for its health system. What this means is that the state will enjoy improved health and hospital facilities, more frontline services and improved care for patients no matter where they live. We chose superior schools. Schools in Tasmania will benefit from an additional $400 million under the groundbreaking National Plan for the School Improvements. The federal government is paying $2 to every dollar being spent by the state government on our nation's schools. What an achievement. We chose more jobs, the issue of highest possible importance to Tasmanians. Over the next 4 years, over $10 billion will be spent on employment services. This includes $5.3 billion for Job Services Australia, an organisation that works with job seekers to provide the training and support they need to get back to work as quickly as possible. Since this scheme replaced the Liberals' job network, we have achieved 90% better outcomes for the most disadvantaged job seekers. We want all Tasmanians to be able to find work, and this investment has seen over 43,000 people placed in work since the program began. On top of this, $238 million in new funding has been dedicated to establishing up to 10 industry and innovation precincts, including a defence. This takes total funding for this initiative to close to $500 million. We chose the National Broadband Network, something that I'm particularly passionate about, something that Tasmanians have already seen the benefits of from. The Gillard government has announced plans to bring the total number of premises where NBN construction will commence or be complete by mid-2016 to more than 208,000. We're doing it all. And I note also that the state's share of the GST revenue has jumped by $71 million despite predictions it would plunge. If a coalition government were in power, we know that the GST revenue to Tasmania would fall by $600 million. The coalition's plan is to take money from Tasmania and deposit it into the hands of the richer, larger, Liberal-held states such as West Australia. And I see my colleague across the chamber, Senator Sinoditis, smiling. Well, we Tasmanians are not smiling because we know what that real impact will be on health and school, and we won't be doing. We cannot let this happen. When it comes to considering this budget in the broader context of Labor's strong management of the economy, I think it's important to remember that we are the envy of countries around the world. Perhaps if we had actually experienced the full force of the global financial crisis and slipped into a recession, people would recognise just what Labor has achieved. Despite a global credit crunch, Labor has presided over an economy that is 13% larger. Our unemployment rate is at 5.6%. We've experienced solid growth and contained inflation. Australia's enjoyed gold-plated AAA ratings from all three global rating agencies, something the Coalition never achieved in 11 and a half years. Even as various industries experience a fall in international demand and a high Australian dollar since coming to office, Labor has created around 900,000 jobs. 900,000 jobs. We should never forget that during the Howard years, the Coalition failed in its duty to invest in the nation's future, despite enjoying unprecedented tax revenue that delivered a sugar hit to the Australian economy. There were negligible advances in education, health, and measures to assist vulnerable elements of our community. Instead, we saw unsustainable middle-class welfare and a series of election year bonuses and bribes. Not this government. Labor governments understand that not all members of the community can thrive and take advantage of our strong economy unless a level playing field is created. We want our children to enjoy a world-class education system, and we haven't put services for those with disabilities in the too hard basket. On numerous occasions, I've had the privilege of speaking in this chamber about the National Disability Insurance Scheme. And there is nothing more important to this government than realising the full potential of this scheme. This budget sets it in stone. Disability care will ensure the level of support a person with a disability receives doesn't depend on where they live or how they acquire their disability. In Tasmania alone, the Gillard government will contribute close to $250 million by 2019. What this means is that over 11,000 Tasmanians will be eligible for support under disability care. Over the course of today, as journalists recovering from last night's festivities around Kingston and Monica report from the tents outside a rain-soaked Parliament House, we're going to hear a lot of strange things said about this budget. We'll no doubt hear the Shadow Treasurer claim that the Gillard government has broken promises, but he knows full well that budgets need to be adapted to meet changing economic conditions. Well, I hope he does. I'm not always sure by what I read and what he says. We may well witness hysterical precedents from various talking heads on Sky News that this budget would cause the sky to fall in on itself, but of course that isn't the real story. I'd like to remind all Australians that despite everything they've seen on television or read in the newspapers about this budget, what you really need to consider is this: you have a choice. A choice between a government making targeted and intelligent investments in the future and an opposition that wants to make unnecessary cuts that will sacrifice jobs and harm the economy. A choice between a government that is focused on employment and growth and an opposition obsessed with the fear-mongering about deficits and uncertainty. A choice between a government that provides opportunities for all Australians and an opposition operating at the behest of the mining executives, big tobacco and the noisy privileged few. We're not like those opposite me in this chamber. We'll never forget about you, I guarantee you this. The Gillard government will persevere and make our voices heard over the din of cynical opposition jibes and lazy reporting. We will always fight to improve this country and put jobs and the economic growth first. Sometimes in Canberra it's difficult to find the signal amidst the noise, particularly during budget week. It comes down to a simple choice: a government making smart investment in Australia's future, enhancing prosperity across every corner of this increasingly divided country and protecting jobs, or an opposition working for the haves and the have-mores. Labor will never forget you, whether you are someone struggling to run a small business on a slow broadband speeds, someone confined to unsuitable wheelchairs, someone who didn't enjoy a private education on the North Shore.
Senator, your time has expired.